This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy.
Been a long education.
Yeah, you know, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
All right, and welcome to it here on this Tuesday. It's primary day in Wisconsin. Primary day in Wisconsin, which could be key, could be critical, but it's not going to be the game changer they think it is. We'll get to that. Yeah, first, though, 19 degrees this morning. Yeah, 19 degrees what it was when I left the house, and I got to be honest with you. I like winter, but I've had just about enough. Had just about enough at this point. Yeah, I'm ready to embrace spring full time. And by the way, more snow and ice on the way for tonight, tomorrow morning. More lake effect snow coming in off the Saginaw Bay today, pounding down into Flint and Lapeer and maybe Bad Axe, that part of the state. Keep that in mind. More, lake effect snow today. All right, so it is April in Michigan. It gets a little sloppy in money. I get that. Wisconsin, is it a game changer? Well, some would like to say it is. CBS News called it a game changer last night on the CBS Evening News. I don't believe it is. Ted Cruz should certainly win in Wisconsin today. All the polls show the Texas senator running ahead of Donald Trump there, of course. However, with the way the upcoming primaries are stacking up, it's entirely possible Cruz will be eliminated by the end of April. Yeah, he might not survive, and here's why. That's only, it's 3 weeks from now. He'll be mathematically eliminated. Here's why. Even if he wins Wisconsin, and let's say for the sake of argument, he does, that would leave Ted Cruz needing 734 delegates, give or take, and that's an estimate. But then in 2 weeks, it's going to be New York. Donald Trump has had like 36 points in New York. So proportionally speaking, Trump will probably pick up about 60 and Cruz about half of that, 30. Connecticut, they'll split, where Trump is well ahead again. And Cruz can pick up 10. But then comes April the 26th, so Connecticut, Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island all together. By the end of the day, Donald Trump should pick up the majority of the delegates that day, unless Ted Cruz can pull a major upset in Pennsylvania, which would barely keep his campaign alive. It would keep his campaign on life support. And if he does not, he's out. Because he would need 694 after New York. And Pennsylvania would offer 71 of those, keeping him alive. But if not, then the amount of delegates remaining would be 653. Now, here's what we will find out at that point. If it goes this way, come April the 26th, Ted Cruz will need 687 delegates to win the election, but only 634 would be available. Ted Cruz in the last couple of days has intensified his call for John Kasich to exit the race, something I agree with. I don't believe John Kasich is doing he's bringing nothing to the table. He's giddy about it, too. He's bringing nothing to the table, and he's proud to say so. But if Ted Cruz doesn't have enough delegates left on the table to win, we'll see if he'll match his rhetoric and leave the race. Yeah, here's the story of Kasich. He's predicting an open convention. It's going to be so much fun, he says. I believe that a convention will look at somebody like me, and that's why I'm going to be the nominee, he says. We just have to keep going. We're going to have an open convention, he says. It's going to be so much fun. Kids will spend less time focusing on Bieber and Kardashian and more time focusing on how we elect presidents. It will be so cool. And he says at that point, convention delegates will actually feel the weight, the real weight of choosing who the Republican nominee will be. They begin to realize they're going to be held accountable, that they're going to be responsible for making sure we pick somebody who can be commander-in-chief, leader of the free world, and can beat Hillary Clinton in the fall, says Kasich. And I am the only one that consistently does that, except that he's only won a single primary, his own home state of Ohio, leaving him questionable at best. Now, on the Democratic side, I find the Democratic side more interesting right now. Why? Because Bernie's won 5 out of 6. He's leading in Wisconsin. He could make it 6 out of 7. 6 out of 7 wins for Bernie Sanders after today could be, if it's not entirely likely, it's certainly possible, but I'd say it's more like it's likely. In fact, the last poll taken by Emerson here has him +8. Has him +8 on an Emerson poll. So pretty much every poll except one outlier from ARG that shows Hillary Clinton with a 1-point lead. Sanders 6, Sanders 5, Sanders 2, Sanders 8, Clinton 1. Clinton 1. Anyhow, the aggregate of the poll of polls for Real Clear Politics gives Sanders a 3-point lead. And my point being is Bernie Sanders wins another one. And make no mistake, Hillary's people are getting agitated and concerned, as they should be. Agitated and concerned as they should be, because at some point, you know, they have to realize Bernie Sanders is a pretty weak candidate. And here's while we get a little flavor from the campaign trail. Boring Trump. Boring Donald Trump, as he puts it. Donald Trump often says that he could act more presidential than any other candidate. But he told a crowd in Wisconsin Monday that wouldn't be nearly as much fun. It's clip number 3. Go.
My wife is always saying, and Ivanka, you heard of Ivanka, right? Right? Just had a baby. She's great. But they said, darling, be more presidential. Daddy, be more presidential during the debate. I said, I will, but I got to knock off the final 2 first, if you don't mind. Right? You know what they mean. I could be presidential. But if I was presidential, we'd only have about 20% of you would be here because it would be boring as hell, I will say. Now, let me be unpresidential just for a little while longer. And maybe I'll be a little bit unpresidential as I beat Hillary because,
Come on. I don't care if you like it or not. That's funny. That'd be boring as hell. Well, Donald, I can tell you this. You're not boring. And you have brought a lot of people to the polls, that is for sure. All right, sit right tight right there. When building a new home, your options should be wide open. With Greenstone, you can choose to pick up the hammer or, well, let someone else do the heavy lifting. Our construction loans are designed to fit your needs, from do-it-yourself projects and fully contracted to home sites on acreage of any size. Greenstone offers competitive rates with low down payments, and with 31 Michigan locations, they're just a short drive away. Learn more at GreenstoneFCS.com. GreenstoneFCS.com. It's the Steve Gruber Show.
Delivering Michigan common sense with a big dose of truth and honesty.
All right, welcome back to it. Here's my question for you at this moment. There's all this conversation, and New York and California now have signed into law. Governor Andrew Cuomo in New York, and Jerry Brown in California have signed into law $15 minimum wage bills, right? It's a big deal. Hillary Clinton's out there, rah, 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 and so on and so forth. Okay, first of all, Jerry Brown in California said he basically that the law is dubious, and whether it makes financial sense is questionable. But he signed it anyway, of course, like any good, diligent leftist. You know, this might cost people jobs and destroy the economy, but hey, I'm with you, right? So he did it. But here's my question. You hear all of this, you know, the fight for 15. And California has, it says, as it reads, has enacted the highest minimum wage of $15 an hour to take effect by 2022. That's 6 years from now. If people can't make a living now, and that's the argument, and you have to have $15 an hour to survive, the hell good does it do? You'll be into somebody's second term as president from now. I mean, that's an eternity. And if you're making $8 an hour and you think that that's what's going to save your life, or you're making $10 an hour, that's going to say, well, good luck with that. The Democrats are going to run around and pat themselves on the back for absolutely nothing. Because come 2022, they'll be demanding $20 an hour or $25 as a minimum wage. Because by the time you get to 2022, I am quite certain that $15 an hour won't be nearly enough. I'm quite certain that will be, ridiculed as not nearly enough as well. Let's see. Let's hear from Governor Brown. It's clip 5 on the California minimum wage. Clip 5. Go.
This is an old idea from the 19th century, from religious leaders, that work is not just an economic equation, but work is part of living in a moral community. And a worker is worthy of his or her hire, and to be worthy means they can support a family. So economically, minimum wages may not make sense, but morally and socially and politically, they make every sense, because it binds the community together and makes sure that parents can take care of their kids in a much more satisfactory way. So this is about economic justice. It's about people. It's about creating a little tiny balance in a system that every day becomes more unbalanced.
How nice. It makes no financial sense, but, we need to do it anyway. I get the idea of taking care of people. I do. I'm not cold-hearted, but when you sit right there and say it doesn't make financial sense, we're going to bankrupt everybody in an effort to help a few. Who does that make sense to? We're going to sink the whole ship, but some people needed the lifeboat. So it's to me, it's tomfoolery. It makes no sense whatsoever. Let's see. And why not? You sit down and take your medicine. Here's part 2 of this. Let's do the New York minimum wage, because it's important for you to hear what Hillary Clinton has to say about this, because they're staking their flag. This is their claim to fame. One of them is that this minimum wage is somehow the greatest thing ever. Well, yeah, 6 years from now, probably be great. That's clip 4. Go.
When FDR proposed the minimum wage, you know what he said? If you work full time, you should be paid a wage that provides a decent living. That's what FDR said, a decent living. And the truth is, at $9 an hour, you can't afford to raise a family in New York. And that's why we're going to raise it to $15 an hour to restore fairness and decency.
What was accomplished here reflects our values and our priorities. It shows the world what kind of community we are and what we can get done when we work together. The real value of our national minimum wage is lower than it was when Ronald Reagan was in office. So I don't know what the calculation is by Trump and others, but I'll tell you this, they are selling Americans short.
Well, and I believe you're selling us a bill of goods. My opinion. At any rate, there you have the minimum wage is going to write. But again, if it's that dramatic of a problem, why are they waiting so long to address this critical problem, as they put it? Anyhow, so today is the Wisconsin primary. All of those questions are going to be answered. I believe that Bernie Sanders should come out on top in Wisconsin. And in fact, look for it. That would give him 6 wins out of 7 states. And make no mistake, going into New York, they've now scheduled a debate. It's going to happen 5 days before the people go to the polls in the state of New York. So the Empire State debate coming 5 days in advance now, and Bernie Sanders got his wish, demanding to debate the Secretary of State. Quickly to the hotline. Steve is on the line. Steve, welcome to the program.
Good morning. Here's what bothers me about this dribble with Hillary Clinton. She is also part of the same administration that doesn't want to give the seniors a raise because there's no inflation. They want to cut it both ways, hoping nobody's watching.
They want to. So you think they're taking care of the younger voters and ignoring the older voters just because they're looking at demographics of the future?
Well, they don't want to give the seniors anything because that would cost them real money and commitment. But they want to tell the kids that you deserve this and you that, and they're trying to be everything to everybody, and they can't. Free education, yeah. Where does it end?
It doesn't end.
It doesn't.
It doesn't end. All right, my friend.
At some point, there has to be some reality.
I don't disagree with that. All right. I appreciate it, my friend. Thank you so much. 25 after, it's the Steve Gruber Show.
Taking a closer look at the stories that affect you most with a big dose of common sense.
Waking up and Dr. B who stepped across the line. When the watching took control, the first one of its kind. So listen to your radio almost each and every
All right, welcome back to it. It is Tuesday here on the program. Of course, going to the polling places in Wisconsin today. It's an important voting day for those in Wisconsin. Some people calling it a pivotal day or whatever, game changer in Wisconsin. I don't see it that way. Even if Ted Cruz wins, he still has such a extremely narrow opening. And mathematically speaking, like we were talking about here a bit ago, he could be eliminated from this race in about 3 weeks' time. I mean, he could be gone by the 26th, 3 weeks from today, because mathematically there's just not a path forward. Joining me now is former congressman, former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Pete Hoekstra. He is a Shulman Senior Fellow at the Investigative Project on Terrorism, and like I said, the former chair of the U.S. House Intelligence Committee. Sir, welcome back.
Hey, thank you. Good morning, Steve.
Good to have you. First of all, let's just start real quickly with politics here. It still looks like it's going to be Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Do you see something different on the horizon?
No, I really don't. You'd have to see almost a total collapse in the campaign of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton to see anything different, for us, for our choices in November. It's possible on Trump's side. He's had a fairly bad week and a half, but I think he's starting to rebound. But for Cruz and for Kasich, it's a very, very difficult, if not impossible road, at least on the first ballot.
Let me ask you this. As you look at the convention in Cleveland, and there's all this conversation, John Kasich's basically giddy about the possibility there could be a contested convention. If there is, I don't know if John Kasich would be the go-to person, but so it is. How would you think that would play out to the American people, a contested convention, if Trump comes up short by some measure and it goes to frankly, a free-for-all? Good thing, bad thing? What's your take on it?
My guess is that Republicans would leave that convention deeply divided and make it very, very difficult for us to come back together with any chance of being successful in November. It would be very, very difficult, I think. It all would depend on exactly how the key players would act after someone was finally selected. Would they unite rather quickly? But I don't think that would happen. I think it would be. I think there'd be some real hard feelings, and those feelings would continue for weeks, if not months.
Well, there'd be tons of press coverage now, wouldn't there? I mean, James Garfield, selected on this a long time ago, of course, on the 34th ballot. Can you imagine the 34th ballot? CNN and those people, they'd be salivating all over themselves. They'd be pleased.
It would be a media circus But in terms of helping us electorally, I think it would be very, very difficult.
No.
I mean, unless you came up with some, I think Karl Rove was writing the other day, we need a fresh, proven, tested face. And it's kind of like, okay, Karl, tell us who that could be.
Yeah.
Somebody other than who's already been in the field. Who is that person? And I don't see any names coming out that people are saying, yeah, it could be this person or it could be that. We could have a fresh face, but that face might not be tested.
Yeah, you start with 16 or 18 candidates, everybody that was worth something pretty much threw their hat in the ring. At least that's what you thought at the beginning. And now we're down to what we have. All right, we're with Pete Hoekstra here on the Steve Gruber Show. And we have you on here more to talk about what's going on with Islamic terrorism and so forth. It is amazing to me that even now in this day and age, after everything that's happened, most recently with Brussels, on I believe the 22nd of March, this president, Barack Obama, still will not use the term Islamic terrorist. And the strangest thing that I have heard or seen on TV in so long, CBS News cut Hillary Clinton off almost immediately that day when she used the term Islamic terrorist. Oh, we have to leave it right there. We have to go. Boom. And I'm like, what just happened? I still don't know what happened. It's interesting to me that people still will not admit the truth about what this movement of the Islamic terrorists is all about.
Yeah, I mean, the president set that tone way back on inaugural day and shortly thereafter when, they were identified as man-made disasters, when, the shooting at Fort Hood was a workplace violence incident and these kinds of things. And, even as there's been this rapid growth, this acceleration in the terms of number of attacks, the number of fatalities, this president, this administration, even some of the media, like you said, have decided that any relationship that someone brings forward between this and radical Islam is off limits, even for discussion. Or if you bring it up, you are an Islamophobe, and
whatever
you
that
have
means.
no right to speak. And it's like we're never going to defeat this threat if we don't actually have the ability to identify it.
Wouldn't it be nice if school kids were actually required to read why Thomas Jefferson went and took on the Barbary pirates, why he took on, which were basically the states of the Ottoman Empire, because the American ships were being pillaged and Americans were being murdered and enslaved by those that follow Islam. And he went over there and he tried to make a deal with them. He said, sure, give us $250,000 and we might stop for a while. He said, I don't think so. And he built the Navy and went and pounded on them.
I've got an op-ed coming out today, and it deals with teaching of Western civilization at Stanford University. Stanford has eliminated all of its classes on, understanding the roots and the history of Western civilization. And there's a group of students out there that are actually putting together a petition and requesting that their faculty senate actually discuss whether they should reinstate a class on Western civilization. And there are other students on campus who are just absolutely furious that this petition is moving forward and that there will actually be a vote by the students on campus as to whether, the faculty senate should just debate whether a class like this would be appropriate.
Where did all this self-loathing come from, Congressman? I mean, seriously, where did this self-loathing, this hatred for being an American because it's somehow we're these imperialist. America's not an imperialist nation. The only piece of real estate we ever took, we gave back. That's called the Philippines. We were never an imperialist nation. When it comes to slavery, we took in less than 3% of all the slaves that left Africa and migrated worldwide. We had less than 400,000. Doesn't make it right, but on balance, let's look at the truth and understand what the facts are about America and the fact that America, through economic resources and ability and ingenuity and free markets, were able to lift people out of poverty by the tens of millions worldwide, not just in this country. And yet, we have people that want to teach that America is bad. What would the world be without America? Give me 30 seconds on that before we hit the first break.
The world would be in a much worse place. Europe, Asia, World War II. The values that we espouse, and my op-ed focuses on, freedom of religion. Take a look at the genocide that's going on through Africa and going on through the Middle East. Our values, and we have our warts, but our values are fundamental in terms of making the world a better place.
No question. Hold right there. Congressman Pete Hoekstra with us here on the Steve Gruber Show on a Tuesday. God bless America. I'm sick of people taking shots at it. And don't forget your history lesson at the end of the program today, right at the end of the third hour. It's all on the Steve Gruber Show.
The Steve Gruber Show. American values with Midwestern common sense.
In fact, it's gotten so bad in some places that the kids wearing T-shirts with the American flag on it have been sent home from school in places like California and Arizona because they might offend those that are here illegally. It's gotten so bad that some places say that the American flag itself is a symbol of hate and oppression, and therefore it shouldn't be shown at all. I mean, what kind of abject garbage are we filling our kids' heads with to believe that America is this evil place? That we have some saying, I'm not going to apologize for any of it. Yeah, not one bit of it. Have we done some things that are questionable? I'm sure we have. I haven't. And I'll tell you, the American people as a whole are pretty damn good people. We give more, sacrifice more, and help our neighbors more than any group of people in history. At least we did until this group of, petulant little children came along, entitled little children who think everything should be free and demand of us all sorts of things that they're not entitled to. These little liberal fascists that teach our schools at places like Stanford, like the congressman was talking about. We're still with Congressman Pete Hoekstra here on the program. Also talking about radical Islamist terrorism. And it almost seems to me, Congressman, that the way we're teaching our children these days, because I see articles from leftists, whether it could be considered immoral to have children because we might harm our planet, and therefore as an environmentalist, it might be immoral to have a child. I'm thinking, following that kind of thinking, it might be immoral to fight back against somebody screaming Allahu Akbar, because maybe if I fought back to defend my life and my family, I'd be an Islamophobe. I'd be a racist. So therefore, it's just better if they kill me. That's the kind of mentality that we're actually dealing with here, Congressman. Am I right or wrong?
I think you're more right than not. The bottom line here is, we've now been engaged with this struggle from radical Islam for at least 15 years, since 9/11, and you can make an argument that it goes decades before that. But let's just say there was a peak in 2001 when almost 3,000 Americans lost their lives in one single day. Last year, 2015, that number has now increased to roughly 28,000 people who are losing their lives globally based on the threats and the attacks from radical jihadists. And it's spreading. They've got their caliphates in Syria and Iraq, in Libya, and they're using those as bases to expand their terror networks throughout the Middle East, throughout Africa, and using it as launching pads to go into Europe. And the West is incapable of mustering the will. They have the resources, but mustering the will to eliminate these caliphates. And I love it. You now watch our generals talking about, we're making progress against ISIS. And it's kind of like, excuse me, this is a terrorist organization. Terrorist organizations, historically have never aspired to control geography and have never had the capability to kind of function as a semi-independent nation state. And now they are.
Maybe
they
the problem.
Caliphates.
Maybe the problem, Congressman, I said maybe the problem is it's not that we've been dealing with radicalized terrorists, which we've been dealing with, probably a lot longer than 15 years. Maybe the problem is we have a radicalized America. And what I mean by that, and I'm thinking out loud as you discuss this, and I'm thinking about what you said about Stanford, and we read these articles all the time about, Princeton, professors being attacked about freedom of speech and shutting down, freedom of speech at political rallies, and what's going on at Stanford, and kids being sent home from high school for wearing an American flag on their T-shirt. Maybe it's a radicalized America, and what I mean by that, maybe the teachers' lounge turned radical in the 1960s, and therefore we've taught Americans to be self-destructive, self-loathing, and that's why we don't have the will that you talk about. We're missing the will because we have put ourselves and dumbed ourselves down to the point of being, well, for being imbeciles when it comes to what really goes on in the world and the truth about history and so forth. That's what comes to mind when you say all of these things.
Yeah, and, we are about 15, 20 years behind where Europe is. I mean, you want to really talk about, imbeciles and people making funny decisions or terrible decisions in terms of national security. Take a look at what's going on in Europe today. They allow these fighters to go to Syria, and then they allow them to come back. After they fought on the battlefield, after they've learned how to make bombs, after they've learned how to use these weapons, they allow them to come back. They allow them to come back and roam the streets. They don't arrest them. They don't revoke their citizenship and these types of things. And then they open their doors and say, hey, we'll take 1 million refugees. We can't really vet them, and we don't know where they're coming from. And now they say, well, we're going to send some of them back to Turkey. But as a part of that process of, getting Turkey to take some of these folks and house them in Turkey, what we're now going to do is we're going to allow people from Turkey to travel into Europe without any kind of a visa system in place. We're going to provide Turkish residents visa-free travel into Europe, and that just is going to be a huge threat to Europe. And as those things start to become institutionalized, we're going to have to take a look at what kind of travel restrictions we put on people coming from Europe, because America is the target after Europe.
Right, but if you say that, you're xenophobic. I mean, Donald Trump has said that, and he's a racist, he's xenophobic, he's this, he's that, he's everything else. But I think controlling our borders to the south, because we don't know what's coming across there, whether it's from South America or Central America or the Middle East, we have no idea oftentimes. And then you look at what's going on with who's coming right in our front door, and we don't know what's going on. I'll give you 20 seconds for the last word, Congressman.
This is what we've just discussed is the American people, the Europeans, they know what's going on. They know what's going on in their continent. They know what's going on in their country. This is why you're seeing the kind of political upheaval, because the populace understands what the political elites do not.
Congressman Pete Hoekstra, always a pleasure, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, my friend. Former chair of the House Intelligence Committee. There you have it, Pete Hoekstra here on the Steve Gruber Show on the day that voters are going to the polls in Wisconsin. It's Tuesday. We'll be right back.
This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me, gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Been a long education.
Yeah, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
All right, and welcome to it. It is Tuesday. By the way, if you didn't hear it, Villanova won the national championship over North Carolina, buzzer beating three-pointer to win it 77-74, their first national championship in basketball since 1985. There you go. Since 1985. So we were talking earlier with Congressman Hoekstra about, I don't know, I guess the whole mentality of the left, this whole, don't even teach Western civilization at Stanford University. And why not? And why not? Western civilization, for the love of Pete, is why we have modern Europe and America and Canada and Mexico, for that matter. It's why we have civilized nations in Australia, New Zealand. It's why we have republics and democracies all over the world. Because of the inherited and inherent God-given rights of men. But this mentality on the left, this self-loathing, is unbelievable. This self-loathing, this hatred for all things Western, which is what fuels, no pun intended, is what fuels this green energy movement and this anti-America movement. That all fossil fuels are evil. Not true. Not true at all. That man is committing suicide with global warming. I beg to differ. I'm not too worried about whether or not it's going to snow in 50 years or whether the rain's going to come. I'm not too worried about Miami being submerged, except that there's this thing called erosion and wave action. Might cause erosion of the Florida Peninsula, but not because the sea levels are going to be 4 feet higher. And it brings me back to this article I mentioned earlier that I wanted to cite. The headline, environmentalist wonders if it's immoral to have kids. Well, it probably is for him, but for the rest of us, we're probably all right. Former Vibe editor, I'm sure it's a magazine you've read often, and current author Dave Bry wondered publicly in an editorial just a couple of days ago whether or not it's moral to birth a child in a world that could supposedly become uninhabitable over the next few decades. For while the world is a wonderful place, he opines, one we humans have made nicer for ourselves with wonderful inventions like books and record players, penicillin, and pizza. Bry, the author of Public Apology, in which a man grapples with a lifetime of regret, one incident at a time. You see, I don't have any regret. I mean, it's a problem with liberals. They have misplaced regret, and they put it all upon themselves, and then they project it onto the rest of us. Anyhow, he goes on to write, it's also a really awful place, one we've ravaged with deforestation and smog, nuclear weapons, and mountains of pizza delivery boxes and other garbage. Has he stood on the shores of Lake Michigan and looked at the sunset across the way towards Wisconsin? Has he been to the pictured rocks? Has he bothered to walk through Yellowstone National Park or enjoy the seashore of Florida? Ravaged? We, like anybody else, our house is lived in, all right? We need to tidy it up from time to time. It's not perfect. We have a lived-in house, about 325 million of us here and 7 billion worldwide. Then he goes on, the fact that climate change has sped up sea level rise that was supposed to take centuries, now taking just decades, he wrote, only complicates his decision to have children. Bry goes on to note his concern that humans may be living through what many environmentalists and conservationists call the sixth extinction, which is understood to mean an era where more than half of all living species will die on the planet. Well, heretofore, more than 90% of the things that have lived on the planet Earth ever are extinct. Do you think that they were driving around Suburbans and using refrigeration? Is that what killed the dinosaurs? Was it pizza that killed the dinosaurs? One would wonder. Such claims have become popular among academic sophisticates, people that are smarter than you or I that go to work every day. Timothy Packard, a comparative political science professor at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, shares a similar low-drum view of humanity. We humans are creating the conditions of our very own extinction as a species, he writes. He also stated that meat eaters contribute to global warming because eating animals shows that we are living in a period of more suffering than the world has ever known. Yeah, okay. Most geologists beg to differ, by the way, with such pessimistic accounts at the end times because they say humans and plant life typically evolve before they ever go extinct. When organisms challenged by climate change respond by adapting, they evolve, so says Stuart Brand, president of the Long Now Foundation and co-founder of Revive and Restore Project. Still, talk of a so-called sixth extinction does not fade away. Bry used a New York Times interview with climate scientist James Hansen, who is often touted as the godfather of climate action and climate change movements, to bolster his account that humans are killing themselves through so-called man-made global warming. Hansen told the New York Times the world would likely be under oceans of water within decades, not centuries. Imagine that, he said. New York, Tokyo, Mumbai, Shanghai, Bangkok, Amsterdam, Miami, they would go first. Think about the implications: global economic collapse, famine, border disputes, wars. Thinking of this horrific apocalyptic scenario makes it difficult for Bry to decide whether to even have another child. He's already the father of an 11-year-old son, and since man-made global warming is a real concern for future generations, what kind of world would my great-great-grandchildren inhabit? maybe, Bri, maybe you should just cast yourself off the cliff into the sea. And your body could feed the bacteria, the amoeba, and the fish and the turtles. Maybe that would help solve this global crisis and this crisis of consciousness that you're having. As idiots like this guy back in 1970, who told us that within 5 to 10 years there would be 200 to 250 million people a year dying from famine on the planet because we had no way to feed ourselves. These are the same people that told you that oil would run out by 1980 and we'd have no way to transport ourselves. There would be famine. There would be disease. There would be petulance. And there'd be death everywhere. Well, actually what happened is John Deere created some better tractors and Monsanto created some better seeds. And now we grow more stuff on less ground using less fuel and less energy and less impact. And more people eat. And the place is pretty good. And sometimes it snows and sometimes it doesn't. We call those seasons where I come from. Like today, it's going to snow a little bit in Michigan. Is that global warming or climate change? No, it's winter. It's the end of winter, and it's what we deal. It's called mud season. It's gone on my entire life. It'll probably go on for the entire life that you have and your grandchildren have. So I'm going to go ahead and not panic today, all right? If it's all just the same to you, I'm going to go ahead and not panic. And I'm going to go to work, and I'm actually going to be productive, and I'm not going to sit in the teacher's lounge and pontificate about the death of the planet and rising oceans and how people from Miami are going to run scurrying and dying into the center part of Florida. No, I'm just going to go ahead and work today. And I'm going to admire the beauty of Michigan and the Great Lakes and the shoreline and the green skies and the beautiful, wonderful, clean air that I breathe each and every day in this wonderful state in which I live. That's what I'm going to do. How about you? It's the Steve Gruber Show.
Covering Michigan and the world from his bunker below the bridge. Here is Steve Gruber.
All right, welcome back to it on a Tuesday. Quickly to the hotline. Matt checking in today. Matt, what's on your mind?
Well, I wanted to say that high taxation and high regulations will drive companies out of your nation. That's all you need to know.
Well, there's no question. Regulation, taxation, goodbye. That's right.
And the other thing is, if you give bees liberty, they can't make honey. If you take liberty from man, he can't make money. And that's another thing that's happened in Cuba. And eventually that will change. Because liberty keeps marching.
Yeah, people keep fighting back. Matt, thank you for checking in. I greatly appreciate it. America has created prosperity. America has created freedom. America has fed the world and led the world in, technological breakthroughs for, my entire life and then some. My next guest, Dr. John Lott, the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. You can find him at crimeresearch.org. Doctor, welcome back to the program.
Great to talk to you, Steve.
So I'm thinking that I see this event that you've got coming up, and I think, gosh, I think I'd kind of like to be there. This debate in New York City. Tell me about this with Paul Helmke, that you're going to do this debate on gun control. Where's it going to happen? And man, it sounds like something interesting to watch.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, people can get the details for the address, what have you, on our website at crimeresearch.org. But it's Paul and I are going to be debating an Oxford-style debate on whether new gun regulations would make us safer. We're probably going to be getting a lot into these background checks on private transfers, which seem to be the hot issue, and I assume get into issues like Australia's gun control laws and a few other things.
Well, now, when you say, just help me here, because I guess I've never been on the debate team, what does an Oxford-style debate mean to me?
Well, it's basically each side gets to make an opening statement and then rebuttal. It's basically just the time that's allotted for it. So it's the whole event will last about 2 hours. A give and take back and forth. Now, obviously, what do you expect the crowd to be like? Pro-John Lott or anti-John Lott? Well, it's New York City, but it's I don't know. I mean, I suppose it could be maybe a little bit against me, but I've done a few other debates in New York City, and I don't know. Maybe it's like 2/3 against and 1/3 for, something like that. Well, there you go.
All right, so that's coming up here on the, just a couple of days here on the 7th of April. Yeah. So if you're in New York City and you want something different style to do, then you can check that out at the website and see John Lott in action. That's crimeresearch.org. All right, so I also saw something else of interest perusing through the headlines, and that the last handgun ban in American jurisdiction is struck down by the courts. Now, this came in a place that, well, most of us will probably never see, the Northern Marianas Islands, but, it might be nice this time of the year.
Right. Well, I've never been there, but no, I mean, these cases have slowly been working their way through the courts, and you've had, obviously, the Supreme Court decisions striking down the D.C. handgun ban and the Chicago handgun ban set precedents that lower courts have been following, and so finally, the very last place, we've had, like, Puerto Rico's gun regulations, you've had a few other little places, their gun bans have been struck down, and this is the last one. It just shows you, though, that there'll be a number of places that if the Supreme Court changes and you're able to go and have the next president be a Democrat, appoint people, my guess is these areas will again pass their restrictions, and at that time they'll probably be approved by the court.
So let me ask you something, and I'm no expert on the way the court systems work, but at some point you're going to have this gross tonnage of federal decisions, from federal judges, not the Supreme Court, but from all sorts of federal courts all over America, all the way to the North Marianas Islands, apparently, supporting the right of individuals to keep and bear arms for personal protection and protection of their homes and so on and so forth. How can the Supreme Court come in and just basically disregard 250 years of American jurisprudence?
Well, they're going to claim that it's not 250 years. I mean, what's obvious to you and me, isn't always obvious to some other people. They're going to claim that the Heller and McDonald decisions broke with past precedent, and and that they were ill-conceived and didn't have any backing for it. And so, the thing is, the Supreme Court really, before the Heller, had not directly dealt with the Second Amendment. You have a very confused case from the 1930s, the Miller case, which is really the only previous one. That one allowed the federal government to ban shotguns because it said that a sawed-off shotgun was not something that was used in the military, so it was possible to go and ban it. But other than that, you don't have anything, and different people read in different things into that Miller decision, and I think it's at least clear enough to know that it doesn't support the types of bans generally that gun control advocates have been pushing. But look, you had when the Supreme Court struck down Chicago's gun ban, you had 4 members of the Supreme Court who said that if they had a chance, they would rule the opposite way and that they would overturn the Heller decision. And I assume you have justices that would still do that.
Yeah, I have no doubt you have justices that would still do that. It just, I didn't realize where the ban on sawed-off shotguns came from, and now I know. You see, I learn something from you every week, Doctor, and I greatly appreciate it. So I do good on that debate coming up here in a couple of days. And one more time, tell the listeners where they can find out more, get your books, and be well educated.
Well, crimeresearch.org, and they can see all the reports that we put out on everything from regulations that Obama's proposing on reporting by gun dealers to you name it. So,
everything. It's all there, crimeresearch.org. Dr. John Lott, always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the Steve Gruber Show. As you've heard me talk about here on the program in the past, I'm one of those lucky souls that has lost my insurance not once but twice since Obamacare came to be. I lost it originally from Humana, and then I lost it with one of the co-ops that came along. It was the only co-op in Michigan, and I thought it was terrific. Consumers Mutual Insurance, it was called, but it went away. And so now I'm back to my third insurance company. And like a lot of people, I don't know what to make of Obamacare, except that I see my rates are going up. The policies are problematic. I see, different issues out there. And here to tell me more about that is Dr. Leonard Zwelling. He is the author of Red Kool-Aid and Blue Kool-Aid, How Partisan Politics and Greed Undermined Obamacare. Doctor, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So,
Good morning.
I don't know where to start. For me, it was pretty obvious from the get-go that it was going to be problematic for me and my family when we lost our insurance. And now I look at rates at some companies, friends of mine that own companies, 30, 40, 50% premium rate increases. And that's just one of the problems. Go ahead.
No, that was going, as you say, it had to be. If you were going to insure more of the uninsured, it was likely that you were going to expand the risk pool. And expanding the risk pool undoubtedly had to expand premiums. I don't think there was any doubt that was going to happen.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, to me, and I'm no math whiz, but it would seem to me that if you took 30 million people, they said, that were uninsured in America, they were trying to help by creating
50,
this
yeah.
monstrosity, whatever it was, wouldn't it have been cheaper, more cost efficient to just, if you're going to do that, just provide insurance coverage at the taxpayer expense, if you will? Wouldn't that have been cheaper than everything we went through?
It depends. It's a really good question, and it depends what we do once we set the insurance system in place. Because the problem isn't so much the cost. The problem is what we're doing and who's getting the money, and that's sort of what my book speaks to, directly to the issue of the money, which drove the legislation, which drove the system that we have right now. It's all about how much we do, how much is necessary, how much is useful, and what value we actually get from what we do. There are two parts of healthcare. There is how we pay for it and how we deliver it. And since the reform only dealt with the first of those, it should be no surprise that it was not effective in affecting the second.
Well, there's another point that you make that I think is extremely important that I want to get to at this point in the conversation, which is it also ran contrary to the Constitution, the way this all came about. Basically, to me, when I watched it come together and witnessed it along with other folks, to me it looked like a lot of parliamentary tricks. There were backroom deals. There were rules of procedure, and not really the way it was set up to function, the Congress, that is, the way this got rammed through, if you will, on the American people. How did Obamacare, and how do you think it stacks up today? There's the Constitution, and then there's reality. And where does this lie?
Well, no, I think you're absolutely right. This was not done by what the Congress people would call regular order. In regular order, this would have gone through the committees of the Congress and then out, which it did do. So there was a House version that was passed in November of 2009, and there was a Senate version passed on Christmas Eve of 2009. Under regular order, those two versions would have to be reconciled in a conference committee, which never occurred because between the time that the last one was passed, Teddy Kennedy died, Scott Brown won his seat, the Democrats lost their filibuster-proof 60-vote majority in the Senate and knew that if it went to a conference committee, the Republicans would filibuster it. So they had to come up with a trick to get it through, and what they did is Nancy Pelosi took the Senate version and passed it through the House. So rather than go to the conference committee and resolve the differences between the two versions, that's what happened.
And so how is that even legal? How is that even upheld by the Supreme Court or anybody else?
The Supreme Court wasn't asked to rule on its legality to start with. The second, it was asked to rule on a whole bunch of other things. Secondly, it's not illegal. It's just highly irregular. There's nothing illegal about the way the bill was passed. If it were illegal, then it would have been overturned in the lower courts before it ever got to the Supreme Court.
Can you think of any other bill in American history that made its way through in that fashion?
No. I think it's the largest piece of legislation affecting the social life of Americans in the past 50 or 60 years.
And I'm not talking about that, though. I'm talking about any bill that has ever made its way through in that fashion.
No. This is not the way it's done.
So it's dishonest. It's sleight of hand. It's dishonesty. It's behind the back. It's dishonest. Let's just be called for what it is.
It's not only was it dishonest, it was very non-transparent. I think most folks, when I give my talk, when I lecture about this, I think over the course of the last few years, I've lectured to thousands of people, and maybe 3 knew this. When I say it, it's like the lights go on. Most people were very unaware of the tricks that were used to get this bill through.
But and so how could she pass, Nancy Pelosi, how could she pass the Senate version with no reconciliation? I mean, that's the process. How did she sidestep the process?
Because she took the Senate bill and made it the House bill. The House bill got thrown out. So now the Senate bill, which had already passed the Senate...
So, in effect, it was reconciled
House. Because
it was the same piece of legislation.
Correct.
All right, and of course, since that time, the president has changed it 25 or 30 times by fiat, which is also... That is illegal, and nothing's been done about that either, from what I could tell. We're on the line with Dr. Leonard Zwelling, MD, MBA, and Dr. Zwelling, you've written this book, Red Kool-Aid, Blue Kool-Aid, How Partisan Politics and Greed Undermined Obamacare. And, I think it's worse than that. I think there's a lot of dishonesty, sleight of hand. And let's not forget, there's probably people making a ton of money in this deal. Let's be honest. The insurance industry can cry all they want, but they were in position to make a killing at the expense of the American taxpayer.
Oh, they were the number one supporters of Obamacare, because basically what Obamacare did is say, we're going to give you 30 million more customers.
Yeah.
Now, nobody in business is going to turn down the opportunity to get 30 million more customers. So they did. And the drug companies got a deal because their very pricey drugs in the donut hole, which is what the Medicare patients pay, were covered at a lower rate. Everybody got a deal except the docs. The docs, frankly, got really taken in this legislation.
Fact, maybe you can chime in on this, because you can help me with this. Here, near where I live in southern Michigan, the biggest hospital here in southern Michigan, in my region, is called Sparrow Hospital. And a good friend of mine there has been on staff and ran a good-sized clinic there with a lot of folks there. And he said, their incoming, doctors make about $120,000, $125,000 is the starting wage. He says you can't get anybody to take the job because when somebody becomes a doctor, they're 29 or 30 years old. They've got a pile of debt. They've probably got a wife at that point, or a husband at that point, and a couple of kids, maybe a car payment and a decent house, and student loans that is suffocating. So $125,000 isn't enough to attract the best minds in America to health care anymore. Do you find that to be true?
Absolutely true. The debt issue cannot be underplayed. The issue. I came out of medical school with no debt. I was lucky when I sent my kids to college. I was able to pay for their college and for their graduate school. But in terms of now, the medical students are coming out with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt.
Doctor, I think we just scratched the surface here. We covered a lot of territory in 10 minutes, but we need some more time together, because I'd like to continue this conversation in the future.
Fine.
All right. Dr. Leonard Zwelling, author of Red Kool-Aid and Blue Kool-Aid, How Partisan Politics and Greed Undermined Obamacare. And he's a good conversation on the state of medicine in general. You're listening to The Steve Gruber Show.
The Steve Gruber Show. American values with Midwestern common sense.
Well, I won't back down. No, I won't back down. You can stand me up at the gates of hell, but I won't back down. No,
It's Tuesday, and everybody's going to the polls in Wisconsin today. What are your predictions? I'll take your insight today. I think there's 49 delegates for the GOP, about twice that many for the Democrats. It looks like Bernie Sanders is going to cruise to another victory. It'll make it 6 out of 7 for the Bern. 6 out of 7. He will get a place on the podium. I mean, how are you going to turn him away? I mean, Hillary Clinton better be considering Bernie Sanders as her running mate. Otherwise, I think that the Bernie folks will see it as the rigged thing that it is, with all the superdelegates and so forth. And if the superdelegates don't start migrating over to Bernie's side, it's all rigged. We'll see what happens there, but we'll take your predictions. 888-900-9966. Ted Cruz should come out on top for the Republicans. We'll see how that plays out, but Ted Cruz should come out on top for the Republicans, leaving Donald Trump, not in as good a position, but again, not a game changer either. New York is next, where Donald Trump is going to dominate, and then you've got a whole list of states where Donald Trump is going to do very well. And in fact, Ted Cruz could be mathematically eliminated before the end of the month, because you've got states like Pennsylvania, Maryland, New York, Rhode Island, and Connecticut, where Trump is favored in all of those places. New York is April 19th, and then that whole group of states, Connecticut, Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, all on the 26th of April. By the end of that day, Ted Cruz and John Kasich could be just like... Now, Ted Cruz is calling for Kasich, and as is Donald Trump, to get out of the race. And so far, that has not happened. Donald Trump says he doesn't want to be boring. He doesn't want to be boring. In fact, let's hear from Donald Trump about being boring, about being presidential, about the way he conducts himself on the campaign trail. It's clip 3. Go.
My wife is always saying, and Ivanka, you heard of Ivanka, right? Right? Just had a baby. She's great. But they said, darling, be more presidential. Daddy, be more presidential during the debate. I said, I will, but I got to knock off the final 2 first, if you don't mind. Right? You know what they mean. I could be presidential. But if I was presidential, we'd only have about 20% of you would be here, because it would be boring as hell, I will say. Now, let me be unpresidential just for a little while longer. And maybe I'll be a little bit unpresidential as I beat Hillary, because, she's...
Mm-hmm. Yes. Be more presidential. Oh, it's just too damn boring. I gave you that, Donald. It would be boring. This race without you in it would not have been nearly as much fun or nearly as interesting. And I guarantee 25 million people would not have tuned in for a presidential debate, except for Donald Trump. Now, the latest polls show Ted Cruz winning there, and John Kasich, who's basically saying, I'm in this for the long run. I have no chance of winning, but I'm going to stay with this thing. Well, good for you, Governor Kasich. You have no chance of winning, but your whole plan is to get it to a contested convention, and then you're going to win. Yeah, because that makes perfect sense. Take a guy who won exactly one state and make him the nominee, because your Trump supporters and your Cruz supporters are going to flock to John Kasich, right? Right, that's what's going to happen. The chance of that happening is somewhere right around 0, I believe. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I think it's somewhere right around 0. Okay, well, an open forum closer to home here now. An open forum on gun control was held in Kalamazoo yesterday. The big question asked at the public forum: is gun violence directly connected to gun access? Of course, this is a conversation we have all the time. We just had it with Dr. John Lott. The forum was led by State Representative John Hoadley and Michigan Open Carry President Tom Lambert, who shared their views with Fox 17 in Grand Rapids. Clip 7, go.
I'd love to see us expand our background checks. I'd love to see us to work on smart gun technology. And ultimately, let's look for ways that empower local communities to make decisions about the guns in their communities.
Before we can talk about solutions, we have to correctly identify the problem. And Representative Hoadley and I reasonably disagreed on what some of the problems really are.
Yeah, let's see what the Democrats said. I would love to see us expand background checks. I would love to see us work on smart gun technology, meaning guns only work for one person. And most importantly, let's look for ways that empower, and I hate that word. It's a catch-all. It's a crutch word for people that have weak arguments. Words like empower are crutch words for people that have weak arguments. Make a note of that. Let's look for ways that empower local communities to make decisions about the guns in their communities. The translation: empower means let's strip the rights of local citizens by using the avenue of local communities and their governments to strip away their power and their abilities. And one more thing, a little bit of a lift here before we head into the break here. Here's a little something to pick you up. Tom Izzo inducted into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame. He'll be going in on the September 9th class. He was shocked and, well, he was overjoyed. Clip 8. Go.
From the lowest of lows to the highest of highs. And really, that emotional roller coaster is what I felt in the last 2 weeks. But, team that beat us played well. We'll be back again. But there's only one chance to get into the Hall of Fame. And this is the greatest thing that ever happened to me in my lifetime.
I would think. And congratulations, Coach. Tom Izzo, very deserving. I can think of nobody else more deserving for such an honor than Michigan State University coach Tom Izzo into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. It's happening in September. It's Tuesday on the Steve Gruber Show. We'll be right back.
This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy.
Yeah, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
All right, my friends, 6 minutes after the hour on this Tuesday, Steve Gruber with you on the Steve Gruber Show. If you'd like to join the conversation, well, that's an easy thing to do. 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. I encourage your conversation. Get on board. Be somebody. Your friends will hear you on the air. You'll be a big hero. Maybe get a beer tonight at the bar. Who knows? 888-900-9966. This hour of the program brought to you by the Michigan 529 programs. Making sure your kids and grandkids get the education they need. To learn more, go to SaveWithMI529.com. That's SaveWithMI529.com. Well, in this third hour of the program, first of all, we are going to continue our What's Great About America series, which we have now started every day at the end of the third hour. We're going to talk about something that's great about America. I'm sick and tired of hearing only negative things about America, listening to these left-wing, these progressives try to knock America down. It's just a beautiful thing when you see somebody there, some leftist on their iPhone, posting hateful things on Facebook. It is incredible, isn't it? Posting something hateful on Facebook with their iPhone, the two of the biggest companies in the world, Apple being the biggest and Facebook being huge as well, decrying capitalism, decrying America, while two of the American corporations that are the biggest companies in the world empower them to do that with the tools of capitalism. This is the ignorance we deal with every day. But I'm prepared to do what we can. You can also find out more by friending the Steve Gruber Show on Facebook and going to stevegruber.com. By the way, we have a brand new website under construction for you, so we're working on that right now. We're working on that as we grow the things that we offer you, including there'll be a news line on there from the Michigan Talk Network News, MTN News, Melissa Prophet, Katie Hyde, Rob Burkhardt, and the whole team. We'll have a news wire of sorts with regional headlines that affect you around the state, whether it's in Flint or, Negaunee, Ontonagon, or Adrian. We'll cover them all for you, and that's the work we're doing here for you. So I just want to let you know that we're working on it. And we have some other things we're working on that I hope to be able to share with you in the weeks to come as we continue to grow the network, if you will. Now, here's something I find concerning. It's voter day. It's primary day in Wisconsin, right? So they're all going to the primaries in Wisconsin today, and some calling it make or break, game changer, all that sort of thing. I don't see it that way. I think that Ted Cruz is likely going to win. I think Bernie Sanders is going to win. It's more likely a game changer for the Democrats than it is the Republicans, because Ted Cruz's opportunity, his window to become the nominee, is very narrow now. And even if he wins in Wisconsin, which it looks like he's probably going to do based on all the polling, he is still in deep trouble. Bernie Sanders, however, would make it 6 out of 7. And there's going to be a debate now with the Democrats 5 days before the critical New York primary, which is coming up middle of the month, April the 19th. So a lot of good things going on. Don't kid yourself. It's big. Now, here's the topic that has been with us since last summer, the topic that has finally been talked about because of Donald Trump. It's pure and simple. Donald Trump brought the conversation of illegal aliens and our border security to the front of the conversation for the run for president on the Republican side and on the Democratic side, and has the American people discussing it. Well, here's a little headline from the Monitor that I found online. Officials last week spoke up about the Obama administration's so-called catch and release policies, blamed for hindering Border Patrol operations and encouraging illegal crossers from coming into the United States. A recent letter from the National Border Patrol Council states a high-ranking member of the Obama administration confirmed to Border Patrol agents they have no intention of removing illegal border crossers that are being released with an order to appear in court. Brandon Judd, president of the American Federation of Government Employees National Border Patrol Council, states in the letter published on March the 21st, he and 2 other Border Patrol agents met with Department of Homeland Security Deputy Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas to discuss concerns about the administration's policy of releasing the administration's policy of releasing illegal crossers into the U.S. Now, during the meeting, which took place in late August of 2015, Mayorkas confirmed to the agents that the administration has no intention whatsoever of removing immigrants coming across the border illegally as part of the ongoing surge. Isn't that a bit shocking? Now, in this new letter, Judd blames President Obama for undermining immigration laws and having his political appointees implement policies that contradict enforcement priorities. He also states this lack of enforcement undermines the nation's immigration system and encourages illegal immigration. Let me tell you how this works. In order to become a citizen of the United States now, all you have to do is get into the United States. Now, keep in mind, if you walked from Texas or Arizona or California, you walked illegally or got across the river illegally into Mexico, and you were caught by Mexican authorities, you would be sent to prison for 2 to 10 years. That's the rule. 2 to 10 years. If you went from the United States into Mexico, you would go to prison. Almost 100% lock. Now you come here, the Mexican president shakes his finger at us and says, we need water and compassion and food, and you need to take care of these people. My ass. It's been a one-way street into America as the Democratic Party allows this to happen. It's also done by the Republicans. The Chamber of Commerce and others are just as guilty because they want the cheap labor that's undocumented to help power their profits. The Democrats want votes, and the Republicans want cheap labor. A lot of them do. Make no mistake. The American people want security at the border. You and I want security at the border. But I can tell you, blame lies with both the Republicans and the Democrats. Neither one gets out of here. George W. Bush didn't do doodly about this border either. And neither did Bill Clinton. Neither has Barack Obama. And neither did George H.W. Bush, and Ronald Reagan didn't do much either. But it's gotten worse. It's gotten worse because the Chamber of Commerce of the United States and others, trying to pad the pocketbooks of their friends and their pals, have looked the other way, and in fact, they've done more. They've encouraged the idea of allowing illegals into the country so that gardeners and concrete workers and others can do all this work at a low price and make people more money. It puts Americans out of work. Democrats, meanwhile, want them here so they'll vote for Democratic candidates, so it's about power for the Democrats and cash for the Republicans. They're both guilty. Throw all the bums out. Bring in an outsider. It's about time. 14 after on the Steve Gruber Show.
Genuine Michigan common sense on display every day.
You'll take my life, but I'll take yours too. You fire musket, but I'll run you through. So when you're waiting for the next attack, you better stand, there's no turning back. The bill was served, the charge begins. But on this battlefield...
It's 18 after the hour. Thanks for stopping in. It's a good Wednesday. Some winter weather on its way for you. You know, it's April, boys and girls. That's what happens here in the upper Midwest, in the Great Lakes States region. You'll have some questionable weather. You'll have some of that tonight going into tomorrow. Rain and ice and snow and a mix. And, well, just be careful out there tomorrow. My next guest, Bruce Klinger. He's Senior Research Fellow for Northeast Asia at the Heritage Foundation. North Korea now claims to have nuclear warheads that can fit onto missiles, and every time they get warned, they just say, well, let's just touch off another bottle rocket, and they send another missile out right in front of God and everybody, basically, and thumb their nose at, well, the United States, China, Russia. They don't care, and it's a bit unsettling. Bruce, welcome to the program.
Well, thanks for having me.
So, I mean, who actually likes the North Koreans?
Probably just Kim Jong-un. They're not very well liked even by China.
Right. And so how long, would China sit idly by, or Russia, or Japan, or a host of other folks, knowing that he may have nuclear weapons, knowing that he's just unstable enough to maybe, touch one off? I mean, how long can you sit and wait?
Well, we've been sitting around knowing North Korea has nuclear weapons or is on the road to nuclear weapons for several decades now. Back in the mid-1990s, the intelligence community said they thought North Korea had 1 to 2 devices, and since then they've been continuing to improve their arsenal.
Now, didn't Bill Clinton take to the podium, I believe the year was 1994, and tell us we had put together a deal with North Korea that would mean they would, rejoin the family of nations or something to that nature that he said back then, and they wouldn't have nuclear weapons, and the day that we're discussing here today, well, simply would never happen. What went wrong?
Well, North Korea continued to do what it's been doing since the early 1960s when they began their nuclear weapons program. The agreed framework in 1994, North Korea promised to never build either plutonium or uranium-based nuclear weapons. They put a freeze on their plutonium program, but then they were continuing behind the scenes to develop their uranium-based program. And then years later, experts continued to deny that there was such a program until it became so obvious you could no longer deny it. So there's been a tendency over the years really to underestimate North Korea. People denied the plutonium program and the uranium program, that North Korea was involved in building a nuclear reactor in Syria. And now what you hear is a lot of people saying, well, I don't think they will have this capability for several more years. And, of course, I've been saying that for several years.
So did Bill Clinton, what do you think Bill Clinton believed in 1994 when he put that deal together? The reason I ask you, because I want you to balance that against the deal that Barack Obama has put together with the Iranians that a lot of folks say is just as bad or possibly worse than the deal we put together with North Korea. I mean, the Iranians make no bones about it. They will attempt to wipe Israel off the map. They will basically they'll do any damn thing they please, is what it seems like to me.
I think there are a lot of similarities between the two agreements. There were a lot of lessons to be learned from the agreed framework with North Korea that I don't think the administration learned. We don't have the kind of extensive verification regime that we need to ensure that back then North Korea or now Iran is not continuing their nuclear program. In the 90s, the Clinton administration was saying that they had solved the North Korean nuclear problem. Then they later sort of backtracked and said they had solved the nuclear problem at Yongbyon, which was their main nuclear facility. But we know they have centrifuges at other facilities, and we know that they're continuing their program, obviously, because they've now done a number of nuclear tests.
So where do you think they are? Your best guess. We're on the line here with Bruce Klinger, Senior Research Fellow, Heritage Foundation. What is your best guess, Bruce, about where they might be in the development of their weapons?
Yeah, I think we estimate they have 10 to 16 nuclear weapons, and the big question is miniaturization and putting it on a missile. I think their medium-range ballistic missile called the No-Dong is already capable of hitting Japan and South Korea with a nuclear weapon. I think they have miniaturized a warhead. I think they have put it on top of the medium-range missile. On the ICBM, if they're not there already, they're certainly on that path. Last year, 3 U.S. 4-star commanders of U.S. Forces Korea Pacific Command and North American Air Defense Command all said they thought they had an ICBM that could hit the continental U.S. They haven't demonstrated a reentry vehicle, which would protect a warhead coming back into the atmosphere from the heat and the pressure and the velocity. But I think it's only a short matter of time until they do another long-range missile test that demonstrates the RV. And then I think we're going to have a collective gasp from experts saying, well, I'm shocked to learn that there's gambling going on in the casino. I'm shocked to learn that they have an RV capability. So, and we know the missile can range all of the continental U.S. When they did a test in 2012, the South Korean Navy dredged up the first 2 stages from the bottom of the ocean, and their Minister of Defense said, I think it's got a 10,000-kilometer range, which is 40% of the continental U.S. After this last test in February, now the estimates are 13,000 kilometers, and that hits everything from all the way down to Miami. It's the entire continental U.S.
It's unfathomable that we've allowed this to happen. People at the time thought that Bill Clinton didn't have a very strong agreement. It is proven to be true. But they believe that he had a better agreement than we currently have in place with the Iranians. So, not much hope for me there either, Bruce. I'll give you 20 seconds for the last word.
Well, North Korea is easy to ridicule, all the funny things they say and do, but it is a real and a growing threat, and we need to be very concerned.
Bruce, I greatly appreciate your time and insight on this conversation. I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
There you have it. Bruce Klinger, Senior Research Fellow for Northeast Asia at the Heritage Foundation, right here on The Steve Gruber Show.
Keeping you in touch with Michigan and the world.
Someday they won't let you. Now you must agree. The times they are a-telling and the...
All right, welcome back to it on a Tuesday. I'm not sure how to take this next interview. I don't know if it's direct intervention, if it's counseling, if they heard stories. I don't know what to make of it. Because my next guest is good friend Melanie Zaremba here to talk about workplace violence. And I'm like, I didn't say anything. I was behaving perfectly well, Melanie.
Yes,
and all of a sudden,
were.
You're here going, well, we have to talk about workplace violence. Okay, fair enough. Hey,
Not a fun subject. But
and by the way, I have to tell you, very few people get into this very secret room,
Ooh, well, I'll start with a thank you then, Steve. It's great to see you.
Good to see you. You're here in the inner circle, and congratulations to you.
I love it.
Don't tell your friends.
Not a word.
Anyhow, Melanie Zaremba is the Communications Director for the School of Human Resources and Labor Relations at Michigan State University, which, by the way, is a kind of a new position for you, so congratulations.
Thank you very much.
A nice place to be, obviously.
I'm loving it, absolutely.
But you've got this, I don't know, I'll call it this initiative for workplace violence, and it affects people around the state. And workplace violence, I suppose for a lot of us, we think about going postal or things that are really dramatic.
Yes.
But that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about smaller things that, can be intimidating, that can, be emotionally damaging to people, right? Tell me about what this is all about.
Yeah, we're really going to cover the whole spectrum of incidents that could happen that relate to workplace violence. And what we're offering here is, as part of the School of Human Resources and Labor Relations, our executive education is offering a workshop on April 26th, right here in East Lansing. It's at the East Lansing Marriott. And what we're really looking to do is help people focus on prevention and then preparation. So how do you prevent these incidents from happening in your workplace? How do you identify, those warning signs? If you want to know what to look for, if you see some behaviors in a certain person, to be able to prevent these things. And then, unfortunately, when these situations maybe do happen, we want everybody to know exactly what to do in that case so we can help our community and beyond to be safe. So that's why the workshop, that's where it's coming from. That's the purpose of it.
So if I walk by Mad Dog's desk over there and, and he's sharpening his knife, should I,
You know,
I'm just throwing that out there. You know,
you never know.
Yeah.
But,
go to Human Resources. Deb, I don't know what's going on, but Mad Dog's over there sharpening his knife again. What's going on?
Maybe we should have a conversation with that guy.
He seems a little grumpy.
Right.
Okay, but all kidding aside, I mean, you see these things happen where there is a bigger event. You know, somebody gets seriously
like
injured.
San Bernardino.
Yeah, exactly. That had some some different roots, but
sure, yeah.
The hostility that those people had felt from Syed Farouk, they knew some of that was there, and he had this hostility. Now it was religious born, but
sure.
I mean, if their attitude has changed or their disposition or their general demeanor. I mean, you can feel that, right?
You can, yeah. And it's really, one of the keys is following those instincts when you do have a sense. And nobody wants to walk around paranoid all day either. That's no fun. But that's why, know the specific behaviors that could lead to an incident. Look for those, like you just said, look for those changes and be able to identify them.
You see, if you weren't here, I would talk about people that walk around paranoid on a regular basis. But see, I don't want to link you with people who, do you know that she was on a show and they said that these people on this list. No. I don't want to.
Right, we don't want to go there.
You're from Michigan State University and you're here as a non-political, bipartisan friend to all people in all workplaces.
Well, thank you, Steve.
There's my disclaimer to make sure that Mel Z here, she's clean.
That was great.
Folks, she's clean.
Thank you.
All right, so give me some ideas of things that maybe get overlooked, because I think that there are bullies in workplaces the same as there is when we were kids on the playground.
There
there's
really are.
people that and people get it. I mean, let's be honest. There's a lot of people out there that are quiet, more reserved, and they kind of, I think, are more willing to go with the flow than speak up because they do get kind of pushed around and manipulated. And to me, that's maybe not violence, but it's right on that line before it becomes that way.
Yeah, it's, the word passive aggressive has the word aggressive in it. And so, that can definitely lead to some underlying feelings that develop in a person. And yeah, you don't want to walk around antagonizing people either. But that's why, identifying those risks, recognizing the warning signs in a person, being able to respond to that. And also another thing that we want to talk about is security, your workplace security program overall. So we're going to help organizations kind of look at, do they have any processes in place to begin with? And if you don't, in this workshop, April 26th, we're going to help you know how to develop that program.
Yeah, I'm going to be sending our director of sales over there to explain, security systems and how they work. Because some places you go to business, certainly government buildings.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't get through without a metal detector and, and a locked door.
Yeah.
But it depends on a business. I mean, we have great security here because, you're on-air people. You never know who might come, walking
they
through the door,
right
I suppose.
Through.
I mean,
same with my office.
Right. I mean, they let you in here. You see, so
nobody is safe.
Very confusing.
Right.
But these are all very important concerns. I think that, I don't know. I guess workplace violence has probably gone on forever, but to me, maybe it seems more pronounced. Maybe because we hear about it more, or maybe it just happens more.
I think it's
really
probably
sure.
a combination. I mean, we definitely it has escalated, and then of course the media 24/7 is covering it more.
Put the spotlight on it.
It's a spotlight on it, yeah. So.
But let's be clear about this. It's happening at Michigan State, but you're inviting people from all over the state, and that's why we're putting it out there on the program today. Whether you're in Marquette or Newberry or wherever you might be listening today, you're more than welcome to jump in your car, come down to this workplace violence. It'll talk about, warning signs, way to secure your workplace, way to have plans in place if something does happen. These are all important concerns. I mean, and God forbid you would ever have a San Bernardino or an active shooter type situation occur. But if you did, you need a plan. You need to be prepared.
You said it perfectly. Yes. That's exactly right. And
that's
why we're doing that. Yes. You don't even need me, Steve. That is exactly why we're doing this workshop. And actually, kind of an interesting story. Our director of executive education programs, she's the one who's going to be teaching this program. Her name is Tina Riley. She was in a situation like this in one of her careers early on and found herself in an active shooter situation. And she has said, she didn't know exactly how to handle it. It had a happy outcome, thankfully, because she's
here.
She's still with us and she's teaching. But she has personal experience with this subject. Not only does Tina Riley, and she's just a phenomenal instructor beyond that, she'll make this course very, very engaging. But we're going to have local law enforcement on hand who are going to be there to help answer questions. So it's going to be a really interactive and engaging workshop.
On a related note, coming up and making loud noises behind Tina as a joke is not funny to her.
Do not try this.
Do not do that. This is, you might end up with a black eye, but it'll be called self-defense.
Yes.
I'm just joking, Tina.
She knows how to handle herself.
Yeah, and so she has real world experience.
She has real world experience, and this is the subject that's very passionate for her, and that comes through in her facilitation of the course.
And on a topic like this, let's be honest, credibility, there is no substitute.
Absolutely.
And so there it is. Again, this is going to happen Tuesday, April the 26th. It's from 8 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon. It'll be held at the East Lansing Marriott. You can register today. I'm going to give you the phone number here, which is 517-355-9592. 517-355-9592. We will also put it up on the Steve Gruber Show Facebook page. So if you need to go find it, go to the Steve Gruber Show Facebook page. Give us a few minutes. We'll have it up on there for you. 517-355-9592. Workplace violence. It can happen, and you need to be aware of it. Melanie Zaremba, greatly appreciate you coming in.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate being here.
It is Tuesday here on the program, and greatly appreciate your support. The hotline number, 888-900-9966. See how fast that went? See how easy that is? We'll be right back.
Getting your day started with news from around the state and around the world. Common Sense Radio. This is the Steve Gruber Show.
There she stood in the street, smiling from her head to her feet.
45 after the hour, and it's still early in Las Vegas, Nevada. So if you're going to lay $2, if you listened to the show yesterday, you heard me with Tim Stout, right? Who was live in Oxford, England, in a betting parlor. Naturally, why wouldn't he be? But he was sitting there. He was going to put $2 on Donald Trump for me to win it. So there's. I laid my bet at this point. I think Trump's going to make it through. I'm put my $2 on him at this point, and I can always reserve the right to change my mind. I just think the window for Ted Cruz is so narrow now. Even though Ted Cruz is likely to win Wisconsin today. Megan Barth with me, founder, proprietor, ReaganBaby.com. Megan, welcome back.
Good morning.
Want me to get $2 in for you as well?
Sure, why not?
Sure, why not? Donald Trump had a bad week. There's no question about it. But right now I look up and I see him walking around chatting directly with people on Fox News at some diner in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin. He's trying, but it's likely that Ted Cruz will win there. I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters because mathematically speaking, I think Cruz is out by the end of April, if I'm reading the numbers right. What do you think today?
Yeah, I think Cruz is going to walk with Wisconsin. However, you look at the numbers. Yeah, Donald Trump had a bad week, but he rose in the polls.
So, you'll have that.
No matter what you throw at the guy, he gets more followers. And the thing is, I threw my support behind Trump last week because of Michelle Fields. And I think this is what's happening. People can see through the BS, really.
And Michelle Fields was an opportunist. I mean, his campaign manager didn't do anything except what would happen to anybody who was trying to dog a candidate and get in their face. You would be stopped. There's no crime there. I mean, trust me. I've been around presidential candidates. If I had tried, when I last saw Donald Trump, for example, in Las Vegas here a few weeks ago, if I had tried to run up and say, "Hey, what's going on?" I'd have been tackled.
Exactly. Yeah, body slammed to the ground.
Yeah, exactly.
She came out with a completely fabricated story in order to try to bust him for assault. Well, you can't fabricate the story. You cannot embellish the truth, especially if you're a quote-unquote journalist that's going to put something on the record. Because, oh, by the way, in this era of social media and iPhones and cell phones and cameras, you're caught. You're caught red-handed.
But they did get him charged with some sort of misdemeanor, something or other, right?
Yeah, battery.
Yeah.
Battery in Florida, and I think it's another, you touch somebody and they don't want to be touched. That's what battery is.
So the threshold is a little low.
Correct. Yeah.
Huh.
And so for all of the conservative media darlings on the right, like Dana Lash and Katie Pavlik and others that have rallied behind the victim, look like complete and total fools. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to be part of that camp because it's a bunch of you know what? And so I threw my support behind him. And, like I said, people are going to vote for who they can trust. And for me, I trust that a builder is going to build a wall, and I trust that a capitalist is going to create an environment to, create jobs. So that's what people are thinking of. They're not thinking about abortion, okay? This is not the top 5 list of on anybody's mind. And so the wedge issue and the gap, don't exist. So, if he was so damaged, his numbers would have gone down. His numbers went up. Yeah, Cruz will probably take Wisconsin by a small margin, but he was leading by double digits at one point. Now he's leading under 10.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and what's interesting, you look at significant endorsements, and I had one pop up on social media today, and I went and checked it. It appears to be true because Ted Cruz is anti-woman. Ted Cruz is a racist. Charles Evans, who is the brother of Medgar Evans, the murdered civil rights activist from the 1960s, who's 93 years old now, just endorsed Donald Trump. And he said, I am endorsing Donald Trump because he's the guy who can change things for my community. I have seen no evidence of racism. And he goes, and racism exists everywhere. He goes, I've got a little bit of racism in me. So says Charles Evans, the brother, again, of Medgar Evers. Charles Evers, who was murdered in 1963. Everybody knows who he is. And he just endorsed Donald Trump. And I think that I think you're right. There's a BS meter that most people have, except for those that are just, dyed in the wool, doesn't matter. Hillary could stand on national TV and drown puppies and they'd find some way to rationalize it and they're going to vote for her anyway. Except for those folks, I'm right. Well, there were too many puppies. She needed to drown them. Whatever. I mean, and they would vote for her anyway. It makes no difference.
Absolutely. There's always going to be lemmings that are lost. That ideology above everything else.
But common sense people can look at that and go, that woman didn't get touched. They can look at what he said. He didn't, some Klan member that we haven't heard about in 30 years allegedly endorsed him. And so what? What's that have to do with him? Nothing, is my point.
Well, exactly. And Ted Cruz, quite frankly, is being used. Ted Cruz has zero. Hello, everybody that's supporting Cruz out there. God love you. Love that you're a constitutional conservative, but let's come back down and put the feet on the ground and get in touch with reality. There is no way he is going to get the nom. He's being used by the establishment in order to stop Donald Trump. And I look at who lines up against whom, and Donald Trump has the right enemies. The right people don't like him, and that's what I like. What tells me is that when you have 54 private jets parked off a private island and all those people on those jets were conspiring only to stop Donald Trump who has one jet, 54 jets, I'll take the guy with one jet. Because the guy in 54 jets, their only concern is to hold on to their power and get more jets on the backs of the American people. Yeah,
there's a lot of truth to that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to keep an eye on Wisconsin. I expect the Cruz is going to have some victory here, but maybe you're right. Maybe the momentum's with Trump. And Bernie Sanders is going to win 6 out of 7. It'll be number 6 out of 7 for Bernie. We'll talk about that next time, Megan. You can find out more from Megan at ReaganBaby.com. ReaganBaby.com. And we'll talk soon, my dear.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Steve.
There you have it, Megan Barth. God, I love her. It's the Steve Gruber Show on a Tuesday. Back in a moment. Welcome back to it. Here is where we're going to spend time every day from now on talking about what's great about America. I am sick and tired of hearing imbeciles run America into the ground. I just can't take it. So what we're going to do at this part of the program today is talk about some good things about America, what makes it great. The great people, the great movements, the great accomplishments, the great inventions, all of these things that make America the greatest nation in the history of nations, because I think people lose sight of it, even you and I some days, because we hear all these negative messages. Now, I heard this radio ad, and I wanted to play you this radio ad from Charlie Daniels. So we got that queued up and ready. I want you to hear Charlie Daniels talk about America here for about a minute. Go.
To the Ayatollahs of Iran and every terrorist you enable, listen up. You might have met our fresh-faced flower child president and his weak-kneed Ivy League friends. But you haven't met America. You haven't met the heartland, where the people will defend this nation with their bloody, calloused, bare hands. That's what it takes. You haven't met the steel workers and the hard rock miners or the swamp folks in Cajun country who can wrestle a full-grown gator out of the water. You haven't met the farmers, the cowboys, the loggers, and the truck drivers. You don't know the mountain men who live off the land or the brave cops who fight the good fight in the urban war zones. No, you've never met America, and you ought to pray you never do. I'm the National Rifle Association of America, and I'm freedom's safest place.
Now, if that doesn't give you goosebumps, if that doesn't give you chills, you haven't met America, and you better pray you never do. Loggers and farmers and hard rock miners and people that go to work every day, just like me and you. That's America, because we are the hardest working, most passionate people in the world. We dream big and we succeed big. We are America. And you ought to be damn well proud of it today when you go to work and when you look around. Look at the cars you drive and the stores you shop in and the house you live in and the people that are around you. This is America, my friends, and this is the Steve Gruber Show. And this will be the lesson every day right here. Don't miss it. We'll talk tomorrow.